It's my pleasure to welcome you to our annual conference of ConTrust, also in the name of Nicole Bueschi, Nicole and Vinzenz, who's sitting over here, of the third annual conference of the cluster initiative, ConTrust, Trust in Conflict. We're very happy to have you all here, and special thanks to the participants who traveled far distances in order to be here with us. Traveling far or not so far distances today is, as you know, extremely difficult because of the strike of the German railway system. So I fear a number of people have not been able to join us. This conference marks an important moment of transition into a new ConTrust project, which we have formed on the basis of the first one, namely the Excellence Cluster Project, ConTrust, with the spokespersons, Nicole Deitloff and Vinzenz Hediger, who have been leading our effort to apply for funding with the Federal Excellence Strategy in Germany. I want to take the opportunity to thank all those who've been working hard in this endeavor, especially Nicole and Vinzenz, but also Tobias Wille, who is coordinating the effort. The leaders of the research areas, Greta Wagner, Guido Friebel, Rolf van Dijk, Christine Laudenbach, Martin Saar, Lisbeth Zimmermann, Hannah Pfeiffer, and Indra, speakers, and all other colleagues working with us. The Hessen-funded project, which is what we are now here performing, had 5 research groups, which we then reorganized into 4 research areas, and the new areas took the lead in organizing the 4 panels of this conference, which I very much look forward to. I also extend my thanks to our great Normative Orders and ConTrust staff, without whom this conference would not have been possible, and the new proposal and many other things that we do here. Rebecca Schmidt, especially our managing director, is to be named first, but also many others, including Michael Graf, Oliver Brückmann, Anke Harms, Manuel Steinert, many others who are sitting over there. Thank you very much. When we thank these great people, we should also note that we do not just organize conferences, apply for grants, and so on, and do research. We also helped to create new professorships and help hire excellent new colleagues. Some of us are among us here: Thomas Wiebricher, Christine Laudenbach, Hannah Pfeiffer, Tobias Singelstein, Tobias Wille, Lisbeth Zimmermann, and hopefully soon 2 more joining us as professors. Of the great doctoral students and postdocs who joined us 2 years ago, 4 have already left us for excellent professorships in Germany, actually 5, I think, in Germany and the Netherlands and Denmark. So if you're interested in more of what we do in our research, please also check the working papers series that we are publishing. Despite the moment of transformation from one project into the other, our leading research question remains as innovative, and some say, and rightly so, counterintuitive, but that's the innovative part of it, as it always was, though now I think a bit more refined. We've made, I like to think, some progress in analyzing how exactly conflicts cannot just stabilize, but also create trust where it did not exist before. And as the 4 panels today and tomorrow will show, this requires a careful analysis of a twofold mechanism of a conflict of interests, including normative interests, remaining in place while something else is going on, maybe the formation of higher order insights, interests, which are formed in conflict and make trust possible. So we're interested in that mechanism where conflict is valid and visible, and where something else happens that makes trust possible. We look in the project at 4 contexts in which this happens: conflicts of political, or contexts of political trust, socioeconomic trust, epistemic trust, and what we call security trust. All of this is based on a general and overarching concept of trust, which we define as the positive expectation of A, that B will be motivated and competent to act or function, if it's an institution, in a way which is conducive to, or at least not detrimental to, A's interests, without A being able to know whether B will act or function in that way, and without A being able to control B's motivations and behaviors. So the lack of safe, secure knowledge about what the other will do, and the lack of being able to control what the other will do, we think are constitutive of trust. Conflicts, we think, can have a socializing and rationalizing function. If things go well and conflicts are productive, one learns what one disagrees about and why that conflict, which is not dissolved, is not all absorbing, and based on that, one can form a nuanced, in the ideal case, a justified form of trust toward others. We also think that this happens more often than we usually think, and therefore we challenge certain assumptions about commonality, homogeneity, or the lack of conflict as necessary conditions of the possibility of the formation of trust. We don't say all conflicts have such a trust-generating moment, but we're interested in the nature and the dynamics of conflicts which do have such an effect. I think that the 4 panels of this conference will give us occasion and insights into such mechanisms. The notion of comparative we've been using in the title of the conference is to be understood in a broad way, because we compare different contexts and settings, we compare different disciplinary perspectives, and we also compare different cultural and political settings of conflicts and mechanisms of trust formation. Again, thanks to all, especially the participants and moderators and the people who help us today. And in addition to those already mentioned, I thank Moritz Richter, Christopher Hamich, and Chantal Keller for helping us through these today. And with that, I hand over to Vinzenz and the first panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rainer, for this introduction, which included, among other things, a very concise summary of our research agenda. As you mentioned, the project proposal is now organized in 4 research areas, and the research areas were invited to convene the panels, the 4 panels of which this conference consists, but we're not going in the order of their enumeration in the proposal. We're actually starting with research area 2, which is the area that deals with questions of trust and conflict in socioeconomic relations. This is an area headed by Rolf van Dijk, who is one of our speakers here and the convener of the panel. Let me introduce the panelists first, and we have the presentations one after the other, and then we go to questions and discussion. Rolf van Dijk is professor of social psychology here at the Goethe University, where he also served as vice president for international affairs and early career researchers between 2018 and 2021. Prior to his current position, he was professor at Aston Business School in Birmingham, in the United Kingdom. He is the scientific director of the Interdisciplinary Center for Leadership and Behavior in Organizations, CLBO. He has published and edited around 20 books and special issues and over 200 papers in academic journals such as the Academy of Management Journal, Journal of Applied Psychology, Journal of Marketing, or the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. And if you're into numbers, look up his H-index on Scholar Google. I think it's the highest in the research group. Rolf was visiting professor in Tuscaloosa on roads in Greece, in Shanghai, in Beijing, in China, in Rovereto, Oslo, Budapest, Hong Kong, and Kathmandu. So that's a truly global reach, and there's some really interesting destinations on that list. He was the editor of the British Journal of Management and the Journal of Personnel Psychology. His research is in the area of social identity processes, and he applies social identity theory to topics such as leadership, mergers and acquisitions, health and stress, or diversity. Rolf is also a fellow of the International Association of Applied Psychology. Our second panelist today is Kira Bibic. She is a PhD student in the Department of Social Psychology at Goethe University under the supervision of Professor Rolf van Dijk. She completed her studies in psychology in the Netherlands, where she specialized in conflict risk and safety psychology. Currently, her research focuses on the overall topic of trust in organizations. Specifically, she investigates the link between trust and good leadership. So someone who does research that really directly speaks to the core concerns of our research initiative here. Besides that, she's an active member of the Center for Leadership and Behavior in Organizations here at Goethe University. And then joining us from overseas, from the western reaches of Canada, to be precise, where it is now 6 o'clock in the morning. So, and minus 20 degrees, 4 hours out from Edmonton, and that's already really far out. Joining us from there is Dr. Lucas Monzani, who is an assistant professor of organizational behavior at the Ivy Business School of Western University. Previously, he was a lecturer in leadership at the Graduate School of Management of Plymouth University in the United Kingdom. He's also an associate researcher at the Institute for Organizational Development and Quality of Work Life at the University of Valencia in Spain, and the Center for Leadership and Behavior in Organizations here at Goethe University. Dr. Monzani completed a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship in general management at the Ian O. Inititative Institute for Leadership at the Ivy Business School of Western Ontario University in Canada. He holds a PhD in human psychology. He holds a PhD in the psychology of human resources from the University of Valencia, and is an Erasmus Mundus Master in work, organizational, and personnel psychology. His research interests lie within advanced concepts in organizational behavior. He combines his research activities with his professional practice as an executive consultant wherever possible and whenever possible. As a consultant, Dr. Monzani contributed to several leadership development projects within the United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations. And with that, I yield the podium to our panelists, with Rolf van Dijk going first.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vinzenz, for this nice introduction. As you will see, we conceptualized our project long before ConTrust started to exist, and also long before I became PI in the ConTrust project or proposal. But it is related to ConTrust's main idea. As I have said before in internal meetings, I think identity leadership is a great tool that can help us forming the background against which conflict may be productive and may lead to more trust, and or identity leadership may be a moderating factor determining when conflict leads to trust and when it might not lead to more trust, but to less trust. Today, we will show you, as a team of 3 researchers, different perspectives from our project. I will introduce the main aims of the project, will introduce you into the methodology, will show you some key findings, and nothing of it has to do with trust. But then Kira will bring trust into play, and my presentation and Kira's presentation will be mainly on the organizational level. So we studied employees, mostly in for-profit organizations, asking them about their direct supervisors. And then Lucas Monzani finally will open up and talk about our research on identity leadership and trust of political leaders in countries And he also brings conflict a little bit into play by talking about inequality. So let me introduce the aims and some key findings of our project. Well, let me start with a poem by Bertolt Brecht. Who built Thebes of the Seven Gates? In the books, you will find the names of kings. Did the kings haul up the lumps of rock? And Babylon, many times demolished. Who raised it up so many times? Where, the evening that the wall of China was finished, did the masons go? Great Rome is full of triumphal arcs. Who erected them? The young Alexander conquered India. Was he alone? Caesar beat the Gauls. Did he not even have a cook with him? So we think about leadership often predominantly as one person standing on top or over or in front of others, telling them what to do. And a modern social psychological approach, the new psychology of leadership, looks at leadership fundamentally differently. We look at leadership as a process whereby one or more group members of a group influence other group members in a way that motivates them to contribute to the achievement of group goals. And in this way, we think about leadership not only about leaders, but also about followers. We think not about the me or the I, but about the us as a group process that makes leadership effective. So we think groups are effective if the leader does not exert power over others, but is successful by gaining power through others. That's the core idea behind the new psychology of leadership, an idea that Alexander Haslam, Stephen Reicham, Michael Plato first formulated in the first edition of their book in 2010, and then in the revised edition that came out 2 years ago. And more specifically, their idea is that at the core of effective leadership, there's a sense of us. There's something like a shared identity in teams, in groups, in organizations, in countries, in whatever group entity you may look at. And to be effective, leaders need to be seen as group members and doing it for the group and helping the group establish this sense of us. And this is called identity prototypicality, advancement, entrepreneurship, and impresarialship. And I will introduce this a little bit more specifically by showing you the items that we use to operationalize these 4 dimensions when we do quantitative research that Kira, Lucas, and I will show you in a moment. So identity prototypicality is being seen as one of us. So with identity prototypical, we don't mean someone is prototypical as a leader, someone we see as a typical leader, but we see someone as an effective leader when he or she embodies what the group stands for, when he or she is representative of the other group members, when they are seen as a model member or exemplify what it means to be a member of the group. Martin Luther King was such a prototypical leader, not only for the Black community he was addressing, but he was deliberately also incorporating and embracing the liberal white audience that listened to his speeches, that were supporting him. So he was prototypical, if you wish, for an imaginary American audience, and very successfully so. If we look at identity advancement, being seen as someone who does it for us means that the leader needs to be seen as someone who promotes the interests of the group members, acts as a champion for the group, stands up for the group, and does not only have his or her personal interests at heart, but first and foremost the interests of the group as a whole. And I think everyone here in this room would agree that Nelson Mandela cannot be accused of having his own interests at heart, but he was spending 30 years, most of his life, in prison for defending the interests of the Black community in South Africa. The third dimension, identity entrepreneurship, or crafting a sense of us, is when leaders help people feel as they are part of the same group, when they create a sense of cohesion within the group, develop an understanding of what it means to be a member of the group, and when they help shaping the members' perceptions of the group's values and ideals. Here you see the work and organizational conference that we attended this May in Katowice, and they had an identity zone or identity corner in which they invited conference attendants to get together and talk about what does it mean to be a European work and organizational psychologist. This is from my own team. A couple of years ago on a team retreat, we got together and tried to translate Goethe University's mission statement into a statement that was relevant for our own little group. And since then, we take this poster, and on every retreat once a year, we ask ourselves, is it still up to date? How did we contribute to making this statement into life? Translating it into our daily practice in teaching and research, and so on. These are elements of identity entrepreneurship on various levels. And then finally, identity impresarialship. We measure this with these 3 items. The leader devises activities that bring the team together. The leader arranges events that help the group function, or the leader creates structures that are useful for the group members. Conferences are such an event or structure that are useful for group members, our community, that bring us together, that give us structure, that provide us a sense of who we are, that allow us to interact and exchange ideas, be innovative, and so on. And this is our team again on one of our retreats where we cook together, where we do sports together, but where we also spend time on reflecting on who we are and how we want to work. Identity impresarialship can be very little things. The weekly team meeting, the good old Christmas party, celebrating successes like a publication or an award, can be celebrating birthdays. And we all know how much we missed during COVID times when we couldn't meet on a daily basis, when we didn't meet in the corridors or in the cafeteria, and so on. Now, the Global Identity Leadership Development Project got together to build a community of leadership researchers. We wanted to promote the ideas of this new psychology of leadership, and we wanted to understand it better. And more specifically, on a global level, we wanted to explore and validate the ILIs, which is the 15 items that I have just shown you, the Identity Leadership Inventory that measures these ideas of the new psychology of leadership on these 4 dimensions. And we wanted to test its factor structure, stability, and predictive value in all of the world. And this is a guild community which now comprises 52 researchers from almost as many institutions. This is the first phase. We got data in 2016 to 2018 from 25 countries, altogether 7,500 employees from all the countries you see here. This is the map of the world and how much we reflected or where we are represented. We have gathered a heterogeneous sample, half of them female, various age groups, various organizational tenure, work experience, and so on. And what did we measure? We measured the Identity Leadership Inventory, of course. We measured other established leadership concepts, such as transformational leadership, authentic leadership, leader-member exchange, which essentially means is there a good relationship between leader and followers? Is there harmony in the team or not? We measured some mediators that become more important in Kira's talk later on. We measured some outcomes. They are all put in inverted commas because we are very well aware of the fact that we cannot test cause and effect here. At the moment, as the project stands, it's all correlation. But as outcome variables, we conceptualize citizenship behavior. So that means engagement for the organization, helping behavior towards others, being innovative, etc., job satisfaction, innovation, and burnout as one aspect of employee health. And we measured individualism, collectivism to account for cross-country or cross-cultural variation. Now, some of our analyses that I and Kira and then Lucas will present you look quite technical, but we also would like to showcase this to demonstrate to you what we as quantitatively working psychologists use and how we approach our hypotheses, how we test our hypotheses. This table basically tells us when we conceptualize identity leadership with the 15 items that I have shown you, either as a unidimensional concept that allows us to calculate one score to determine do your employees see you as a good identity leader or not, but it's also justified to conceptualize it into the 4 different dimensions of entrepreneurship, impresarialship, advancement, and prototypicality. And essentially what we are looking for is that these scores are above 90 and this score is below 0.10, and then we are fine. And what you see is that it does show these numbers when we do our analysis on the full sample. On this table, it shows you, yes, we also get these scores in almost every country. We do have some problems in Nepal. We don't know actually why, but in every country, we find good matrices, good indices that show that our skills are working. This table shows us, does our item, for example, leader acts as a champion of a group, mean the same in every context, which means do we have the same mean, the same standard deviation, the same correlation with all other constructs? And when we find SCAP, that means we have invariance. That means, yes, it does mean the same. So except some very few items in some very few countries, we don't find invariance, which means the same item seems to have the same meaning, irrespectively of whether we ask it to people in South Africa, in Japan or China, in Chile or Brazil, in Japan or the Czech Republic. Then we test whether our identity leadership concept is old wine in new bottles. Here we correlate our variables to the existing transformational leadership, authentic leadership, and leader-member exchange constructs, and we test whether it's better to put everything in one basket, or if we separate the different constructs in our analyses. And again, as you see, these scores in which we conceptualize 7 different models, these 3, plus our 4 identity leadership dimensions, we do get the best model fit. Then we want to see, okay, but does it help us predict important things? For example, here the dependent variable is innovation. So are employees more innovative when they see their own direct supervisor as a good identity leader or not? And we put that to a very strict test by first entering all the existing leadership concepts into the regression, which is transformational leadership, authentic leadership, and this leader-member relations variable. We see that, yes, they do predict a lot of variation. But then in the last step, we enter our concept, the identity leadership concept, and we still see that it significantly explains variation above and beyond what we already know from 100 years of research. So that means identity leadership is something new. It measures something different from just having a vision, or just being there for your followers, or just taking care that there's harmony in the team, or just being authentic as a leader. It does mean something above and beyond if you create this sense of who are we, and this sense of we are in this together in a team. We find the same or very similar findings if we explain job satisfaction or citizenship behavior, and Kira will tell you more about this. Just 2 more examples on how we approach this thing and what our data is good for. This is a paper that we just published in Applied Psychology a few months ago, in which we wanted to predict innovation. And our idea was that identity leadership may predict followers' innovative behavior, mainly via this path of increased social identification with the teams and organizations people work in, whereas transformational authentic leadership and this LMX may also have some effect on innovation, but mainly so because people trust the leader more, identify more with the leader. And indeed, we find that this model by and large is confirmed. If we look at the effect of culture, we find that the effects are the same, whether we measure them in the US or in Germany or in the UK or Australia, or whether we measure them in Asia or South Africa or Egypt. But the effects are stronger in collectivistic cultures, as you may have expected in collectivistic cultures in which the group as such is more important than the individual. Identity leadership is even more effective. And finally, this is the second phase of the project in which we added some data. I will not go into the details here, but finally some results for burnout. So, of course, as organizational researchers, we often are asked by organizations to help them being more productive or more innovative. But as psychologists, of course, we are also interested to keep them healthy and to focus on employee job satisfaction and well-being. And therefore, we included burnout in our concept. And this is now the second phase of the data collection, in which we again collected 7,500 employees globally. And this is what we find. When leaders are seen as good identity leaders, employees report lower burnout. And why do they do so? Because they are more identified with their team. And what is the reason for why team identification results in lower burnout? Because, and we have seen this in numerous other studies, they support each other more and they develop a sense of collective self-efficacy. So they develop a sense that together we can overcome the problems. Together we will be able to manage stress for a while or reduce the sources of stress. We also found that this was true longitudinally. So changes in identity leadership increase or reduce burnout over time. And finally, we wanted to see, is there too much of a good thing effect? So might it be that too much identity leadership backfires? So in a way that, okay, if my leader is so strong, so good an identity leader that we are all identified up to the roof with our group and we become workaholics. No, we don't find this. We do find a mediation effect that shows a linear trend, plus this dotted line, a curvilinear trend, which show us that even in the extremes of identity leadership, we do find positive effects on team identification, which then leads to lower burnout. So in a nutshell, we find that the identity leadership inventory seems to work everywhere. We find excellent model fits and reliabilities, surprisingly stable data across almost every country. Identity leadership is relevant for innovation and for burnout because it triggers team identification. And this global identity leadership development project provides unique data sets. We now have 15,000 people that we continue to analyze above and beyond these two papers that I've shown you. And now I hand over to Kira, who is working on these additional analyses.
Okay, does this work? Okay. Yeah, I'm Kira, and I'm going to present you another study about identity leadership, which includes trust. And the study is actually about the value of leaders we trust and leaders who make us stronger, exploring the distinct contribution of the different identity leadership dimensions to group member outcomes. So we assessed the 4 identity leadership dimensions: prototypicality, advancement, entrepreneurship, and impresarialship, and their association with trust in leadership and team identification. And also their association with OCB, which is occupational citizenship behavior, and burnout. Rolf already gave you a little theoretical background, so I will keep this short. Identity leadership has been associated with valuable work outcomes in the past, such as job satisfaction and burnout, and we decided now to focus on a health-related outcome, namely burnout and occupational citizenship behavior as outcomes. And though there's a growing body of evidence, there's a clear research gap, which is that studies mainly focused on the first dimension of identity leadership, which is identity prototypicality, or the global construct of identity leadership. And we were now wondering, how do these distinct dimensions operate separately and thus trigger work-related outcomes? So in other words, what is the actual added value of each identity leadership subdimension? As underlying mechanisms, we proposed trust in one's leader and team identification, because both have been shown a stable association with identity leadership. And a recent study by Cook et al. Showed that trust in one's leader and team identification actually mediated the link between identity leadership and work outcomes. So, and as conceptually, as Rolf already explained to you, each identity leadership subdimension fulfills a different aim. We suggest that they also trigger different kinds of mechanisms, and thus we came up with the following model. So we proposed that identity prototypicality and identity advancement primarily relate to trust in the leader, and identity entrepreneurship and impresarialship primarily relate to team identification. Why? Because prototypicality and advancement is something leaders do on their own. So the individual team member observes how the leader simply is as a person, whether he's representing the group and how he or she acts, and whether he's acting in in-group serving ways, and this then consequently induces trust. And for entrepreneurship and impresarialship, it's a little bit different. This is something the leaders are not doing on their own. Leaders are supporting the team in defining their identity, and then help them to live out their group membership by devising structures and activities such as, I've already said, a Christmas party, a team retreat, or even team meetings. And we also allowed these other pathways that were not excluding that both prototypicality and advancement also relate to team identification, and also the case for entrepreneurship and impresarialship also relate to trust in the leader. However, we said that the colored lines were the dominant ones. Furthermore, we hypothesized that trust in the leader relates to OCB and negatively to burnout, and the same for team identification. Sorry, it's occupational citizenship behavior. This is simply another form of work engagement. We tested our model using structural equation modeling with latent factors. We used the second wave guild data set from the Global Identity Leadership Project, and our sample size was 7,855. Here's an overview of the correlations. There's not much to say about all constructs. Those are, we call them constructs in psychology. Were measured on a 7-point scale. All variables were highly correlated with each other. And here we come to the results. So as you see here in this green boxes, prototypicality was indeed more strongly related to trust in the leader than to team identification. And we know that as we tested the differences between these effects were significant. And advancement was also more strongly related to trust in the leader than to team identification. And here where we hypothesized that entrepreneurship more strongly relates to team identification also was also confirmed. Only here measuring impresarialship is not entirely in line with our suggestions, although this is going, can you see the mouse? Yeah. Although this is going into the right direction, this effect here, though it's negative, is at least descriptively stronger, so we cannot say that this hypothesis is confirmed. And trust in the leader and team identification both have been significantly associated with OCB and burnout. So concluding from this, the first hypothesis can be confirmed, the second one only partly, and the third and the fourth as well. And this now indicates also an indirect effect of the identity leadership subdimensions on those outcomes via trust in the leader and team identification. And here you see an overview of the results of the mediation analysis. And as you can see, most mediation analyses turn out significant. And this provides us with theoretical and also practical implications. First of all, it further validates the four-dimensionality of the identity leadership construct, and as it provides us with insights into the operating principles of identity leadership's dimensions. And this then provides us with practical implications for future work-related interventions, such as leadership trainings, as they can be designed more to the needs of the specific company. In conclusion, so identity leadership is relevant for work outcomes because it triggers trust and team identification, and it works differently via trust and team identification. And that's my studies with these are my, yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Can I get a confirmation that you're hearing me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna share my screen so it's easier for me to click the slides. Oh, okay. So I need the host to allow me to share the screen, please. So these are the same slides that Rolf and Kira had. I'm just using them here for ease of presentation. Also, if somebody can let me know when there are 2 or 5 minutes left of the time, because I cannot see you when I'm presenting. I would like to say that it's a great honor to be here, and I thank Rolf and everybody at Goethe for inviting me and having me here. And I'm gonna present a study that extends a little bit the findings that Kira and Rolf show. It's a work that we did together, and together along with the other authors of the Guild project. So again, I won't get into too much detail about the identity leadership, but I'm also going to show the other side of the coin, which is the engaged followership approach. As Rolf was saying earlier before, leadership, it's an influence process that without followers cannot really work. Of course, in the same way that things may operate in organizations, the thesis could be made that we can elevate this to the national level. So if we elevate this to the national level, we should see the similar dynamics that we see in organizations. Alex Haslam, one of our Guild members, and he recently did a qualitative study applying this logic to the rise of Donald Trump in the US, but not so much about Trump himself, but what is behind and beside him. So, you know, the slogan that he had about making America great again, that's creating symbols, that's identity entrepreneurship. And then on the other hand, we have these supporters that are blindly following this in my personal opinion, quite destructive leader. And no matter what you do, you cannot convince them otherwise. You cannot convince them that maybe following him is not in his best interests. The only logical explanation I could find by observing this in North America is that the mechanisms and the processes of identity leadership and engaged followership are here at play. Of course, this is very depressing. So I was trying to find, when we were talking with Kira and Rolf working on this paper, we're trying to find, is the opposite true? Can we actually appeal to the better angels of our nature, as Lincoln was saying to his fellow Americans as North American US citizens almost 200 years ago? So we're going to follow the logic of identity leadership and engaged followership, and we're gonna try to see if we can apply this logic for constructive ends instead of promoting hate and division among the US society. So don't be scared by this chart. I'm gonna walk you through, but basically this is the whole logic of our model. Kira, in the presentation before, was talking about organizational citizenship behaviors, but basically when people go above and beyond their job description to do things that help contribute and advance not only the goals of the organization, but also to help each other out, to help his or her fellow coworkers, by providing additional information, helping them out with work, all of these positive behaviors that help groups consolidate and become more stronger. So what we found out when we were writing a paper is that although organizational citizenship behavior has been studied quite a while in organizations, and we know a lot about that construct, in society or at the national level, we didn't find, or at least in our field, we couldn't find a similar notion. So we decided to elevate this idea of organizational citizenship behavior to the national level, and we proposed that citizenship behaviors can be bucketed into two big ideas. One is engaging in societal behaviors that contribute the well-being of your fellow citizens, helping somebody out without any reason. Or also, the other option is to say, well, I'm going to do something for my country. Quoting Kennedy's words, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And because this is a very simple, because we have this in many countries, we cannot make really complex models. So we try to keep it as simple as possible. So Rolf already showed you that the 16 items of identity leadership that we use as our metrics work. Well, from those 16, you can choose one of each of these dimensions as your most relevant indicator for that construct. So one item for prototypicality, one item for impresarialship, one item for advancement, and one item for the fourth one. I don't remember. And also we did the same thing for civic citizenship behaviors. We have 3 items exploring how people support other fellow citizens and how people take action to help their countries. The logic behind this elevation to the national level follows the same self-categorization logic that underlies social identity theory and identity leadership. And what I believe it's interest for this conference is that we also were interested not exploring so much how citizens trust their leaders, their political leaders, because I'm sure there's a whole discipline interested in that, but can a national leader that is seen as representative, advancing, shaping and embodying embodying the interest of the nation, create trust from one citizen to the other. So we're not looking at trust in leadership, we're looking at trust in fellow citizens. So this is actually a very important distinction because, when you focus on trust in leaders, you can claim many reasons for why people blindly follow a leader. But what I think it's the interesting and cool part of the study is that we are finding ways to predict how we can help, how we can create trust among citizens, which is the antithesis of what Trump and other populist leaders want to do around the world. And because all of this, it's self-reported data and it's information from a single actor, I thought it was important to incorporate more what we call exogenous variables that do not depend on the actor. So we're asking the respondent to say, okay, what do you think about your leader? Do you trust your fellow citizens? Would you do something to help them? All that is good, but it's all contained into the mind of the respondent. So here we added an additional variable, which is economic inequality. And in economic inequality, I think it's relevant for this study because it works against this notion of a shared sense of us. Economic inequality, both experimental and societal research showed that it's bad for the overall health of the nation. Countries with higher inequality report higher depression, higher anxieties, more crime, more social unrest. I'm sure our colleagues from different disciplines can speak much more to this than I can. But also in social psychology experiments, we see that when you manipulate inequality in a small group, you can create an increased endorsement of negative stereotypes that tend to divide society. So, of course, this requires you to engage in a bit more complex statistical analysis to see if all of these predictions that we're doing here actually work or not. So to summarize this first theoretical model, we believe that identity leadership, as measured by 4 behaviors, increase the trust that citizens have on their fellow citizens. And then that relates to 2 types of civic citizenship behavior. More helping other people, more helping helping your country, taking action to help your country. However, economic inequality, as I was saying before, we believe that reduces the trust in fellow citizens by amplifying the differences rather than seeing what we have in common. But also it may also weaken the effect that trust has in driving behaviors that help your country and help your people. So as part of the GIL project, we employed the sample that has to do with this, I think if I'm correctly, the second study, the second wave of our data collection, but it's really a large and representative sample. We have Australia, Belgium, Canada, Germany, India, you name it. For time reasons, of course, I will not get into the script of each country, but you can find it in the paper that we recently got accepted in political psychology. So again, the 4 items that I was referring to is, for example, my country leader is a model member of our country. My country leader acts as a champion of our country. My country leader creates a sense of cohesion within our country. My country leader creates structures that are useful for our country. In terms of trusting fellow citizens, I trust other people in my country, very straightforward item. And then, examples of the other 6 items are, I help other people to live in my country, embrace my country values and culture. And for economic inequality, we went to the World Bank and we operationalized the Gini coefficient, where 0 represents a perfect equal society and 1 represents a perfect unequal society. So what I show you here very briefly, but I will not get into the technical aspects, is a series of studies that we have to do to show that actually indeed our proposed model replicates across these 26, 27 countries. So as Rolf told you, when we're doing this confirmatory factor analysis for this reduced version of the scale and reduced version of the civic citizenship behavior scales, we can see that the RSMEA, which is the one that needs to be below 10, it is below 10. And CFI and TLI, the higher the better, we're at 0.99. And of course, all of these are robust indicators, which means that they allow us to correct for non-normality and other technical issues. Again, not going to detail into that. And we compared these different models that we have here by doing a chi-square test. And the latest model, the three-factor model with identity, trust, and citizenship behaviors, it has the best fit to our data, suggesting that we should retain that model. So before getting into the multi-level nature of our data, the mediation model I was referring to before, that indirect effect, meaning that part of the influence of the national identity leadership influencing citizenship behaviors are actually carried through trust in citizens. That means an indirect effect. The direct effect is the arrows that seem like a square, but in the middle you see arrows going first to trust and then to citizenship behaviors. So that one is confirmed. So then we conducted what is called multi-level regression models. We use R for this, and we entered the Gini for 2021. And as you can see in the last two lines, there is what we call an interaction effect. So does Gini that the inequality actually increases or decreases the effect of identity leadership on citizenship behaviors? We did not find a moderation effect for identity leadership behaviors on citizenship behaviors, but we did show that actually when the variation in inequality actually reduces the effect that trust has on citizenship behaviors when taking action to protect your country. So in more illustrative terms, you see that if we have a general trend, when for those countries scoring one standard deviation above economic inequality, that actually increases the amount of trust that you need to elicit the same behavior in other people. So finally, we put everything together and we tested all confirmatory analysis, multi-level, the structural equation model. And again, our hypotheses were rectified there. To wrap up, so we predicted that the perceived identity leadership of political leaders will be a positive predictor of citizenship behaviors towards the citizens and the countries. This was confirmed. We believe that would create trust in fellow citizens. This was confirmed. We trust that trust in fellow citizens would in turn spill over or reflect in civic citizenship behaviors directed at other citizens and the country. We found that trust actually is the mechanism that helps connect identity leadership with the civic citizenship behaviors. We did not find the direct effect of inequality on reducing trust, but I don't think that this is not because the effect is not there, just because our sample size at the country level is too small. We need more countries to further test this hypothesis and see if we still support it or not. And we only find partial support for this idea that this relationship between identity leadership of political leaders, trust, and civic citizenship behaviors, especially in those directed towards the country, it's actually hurt by economic inequality. Key takeaways: identity leadership inventory also works at the societal level. Trust in fellow citizens is a critical mechanism to create a spillover effect by which followers become engaged with the leader and support their leader efforts. And a less relevant topic for this conference, but I think it's an important implication for our field, is that it's not just organizations that can benefit from citizenship behaviors, but actually we can elevate that to the societal level of analysis. And, going back to Kennedy's famous quote is, don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Yes, but only if we are equals. So thank you for your attention, and I'll stop sharing my screen now.